Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Amalgam Comics. Previously, we saw the final battle of DC vs. Marvel result in the two universes merging together. Our first look at such a combination was X-Patrol, about a group of misfit mutants, some more scantily clad than others, invading the sovereign nation of a monstrous dictator. Today, we continue the journey with Magneto and the Magnetic Men #1. Written by Gerard Jones, with some Mark Waid assistance, alongside art by Jeff Matsuda, Art Thibert, Jamie Mendoza, Larry Stucker, and Kevin Tinsley. The cover sees the shadowed Mags with his hand cast outward, as if he were throwing the Magnetic Men like Pokemon. Clearly, the Magnetic Woman is his favorite, since she's the one he gave a nose. We open on a mutant swordswoman named Kokoro, likely the fusion of Psylocke and Katana. Interesting that her name means heart in Japanese, as she's apparently faced dire threats in the past, like the Mephisto-ruled apocalypse, yet now she's fearful of who or what is pursuing her. Psychically charging her blade after being hit with an energy blast, she can tell her foe is trying to take her alive, yet she refuses to let that be an easy task. But that's when a second energy blast basically incapacitates her. A moment of silence, and then one mother of an entrance. Just you wait until your father of an entrance gets home.
A 2-page spread that, unlike the rest of the comic, needs to be turned over to be read, sees the Magnetic Men burst through a wall to protect Kokoro from what they seem to assume is a sentinel, but is in fact a being called Sinistron, freezing the group in a magnetic field. Is that supposed to be Mr. Sinister and Ultron? No fair fusing two characters from the same universe.
Alright, it looks like he's a composite that also includes Nimrod from Marvel, but DC's Simon and Brainiac as well. You win this time, comic. Ooh, punch people in the face for fun and profit. Count me in.
However, the diamagnetic bismuth, probably part toad, and antinomy, yeah, obviously Scarlet Witch, aren't affected and proceed to go on the offensive, only to be overwhelmed by their first cousin, so he claims. Standard family reunion, am I right, folks? Sinistron makes his getaway with Kokoro, and the team is collected by Eric Magnus, aka Magneto. Narration notes that he usurped the robotics technology of his brother Will Magnus and gave life and thought to the Magnetic Men, in order to locate and rescue mutants from a prejudiced world. With this new enemy, however, Magneto swears to fight alongside them, until victory or death.
Let's try to head closer to victory, though, okay? No pressure.
After the team is collected aboard an airship, narration details how Magneto created Cerebro to detect electromagnetic fluctuations caused by mutant powers, which I think is kind of a neat twist on the Cerebro concept. Mags himself, however, is trying to get some beefy, paper-white Tom Selleck-looking guy named Mr. X to help in the search for Sinistron. Unfortunately, he has troubles with his own team, that or he's filming the next Jesse Stone movie, and a handy editor's note points to JLX #1, which we'll get to later. The call ends with a slammed fist, Eric vocalizing his feelings that machines, like Sentinels, should be fought by other machines, not mutants. And none of his Magnetic Men seem to object to that. Instead, they start to bicker. We get an obligatory shot of Antimony's butt, because even though this is a robot, it's a girl robot, and Eric grabs her arm thinking that her talk of feelings, specifically saying she didn't have them, may be a sign she's capable of expressing them. His creations, after all, were made in the image of his Brotherhood of Mutants, and wonders if his memories and or their metallic properties could mean that perhaps one in particular resides in the fembot. However, she pulls her arm back and notes she wasn't built to have warmth, whatever that is.
Between the weird arguments and the robo-butt shot, this is beginning to feel like some kid's fanfic reboot of Steven Universe.
Magneto muses that after the Sentinels created by his brother killed the surrogate family that was the Brotherhood, he took a cue from Will and surrounded himself with machines, unable to express, feel, or require love, as the pain of losing his team was too unbearable to survive again. His inner monologue is interrupted when a large collection of mutants is detected within Genosha, an island-sized fortress. Team Magnet drops in, taking out some surveillance equipment, drone guards, and a wall, all a bit too easily it would seem, only to come upon a splash page of thousands of mutants in stasis cells. Well, they say thousands, but we only see about a dozen or so. Magneto begins piecing together the nature of the experimental chambers as he orders his constructs to free the prisoners, and is struck by an off-panel attack. The Magnetic Men prepare to fight for their master, when Sinistron releases 5 mutants, whom he rewired for the purposes of doing away with the invaders. Eric, however, is having none of it as he launches an attack of his own. "No matter how advanced your artificial intelligence, it must be based on electromagnetism."
It's not every day that a comic tries to make a word that long sound dramatic and intense in the heat of battle. A for effort, at least.
However, Sinistron alters his own EM field and repels the attack back at Magneto, freezing his consciousness and thus that of the Magnetic Men. So I guess his mind-controlled slaves can take 5. The Deathbot then begins expositing on how Will Magnus hated his hard-earned technological skills being outshined by Eric's inherent mutant abilities, until building the Sentinels, which later destroyed the Brotherhood. To counter the ensuing Magnetic Men, Will constructed the ultimate Sentinel, Sinistron, somehow went too far and done gave the machine sentience. However, Tronzi feels both siblings limited themselves, one to mutant extermination, the other to their protection, and the robot decided to use mutants to create a slave army capable of getting rid of the inferior Homo sapiens.
So, wanting to destroy mutants was too limiting for Will Magnus's genius, but wanting to exterminate non-mutant humans is totally within your wheelhouse? I don't know if there's a glitch in your irony subroutine, or you've got an overheating hypocrisy chip.
Antimony manages to break free of their master's mind, suggesting the others do the same, and launches an attack that ends with her, it seems, being reduced to ashes by Sinistron. This angers Bismuth, perhaps based on a kind of prejudice from his cohorts for being diamagnetic, and he gets mad enough that he bursts, with several areas of his body shooting a corrosive fluid, some of which hits Sinistron. Cobalt, having the greatest electronic mind of the group, focuses on forging a kind of ersatz, or artificial will, freeing himself from Magneto's paralysis and using his radiation powers to block their foe's signal. Now free of him and their master, their attacks do enough damage to liberate Magneto, who takes an entire splash page to start ripping apart Sinistron's internal circuitry.
On the one hand, it's a scene that has build-up, so it warrants some intensity. On the other, the lines in the background just seem odd to me. I get they want to show some detail back there, but I guess it's just that I would not have personally gone that route.
Giving a new spin on the old phrase, "a piece of my mind," a small drone is ejected from Sinistron's head, sending a signal to the stasis chambers to terminate the inhabitants. While Bismuth is coming to and dealing with his newfound autonomy, his brothers begin freeing the mutants off-panel while Magneto isolates the EM frequency regulating the facility and blasts it into submission. He tries tending to Antinomy, who I guess wasn't decimated in the attack, but she restates an earlier pledge that she'll fight for him as long as there's a fight to be had, but nothing more. Yet Sinistron's brain did escape, and he'll eventually be back, and they'll need to face him again, and any threats to mutants or humans. The comic ends with Eric lamenting that despite his best efforts to avoid emotional attachments in the company of machines, he finds himself leading a family. Mugging for the reader in classic sitcom fashion for some reason. Next issue, they cross paths with the X-Patrol.
Overall, this was a serviceable story, nicely blending the Metal Men with the Brotherhood, but it took a few conveniences for granted.
The exposition was just on the right side of tolerable, and it continues a well-executed tone that this universe is just natural to everyone. But Sinistron's motivations felt confused and hypocritical, and he never did anything with those first 5 mind-warped mutants he freed. They show up on a couple pages, and in all the time the heroes were incapacitated, they never actually got to do anything. Speaking of doing nothing, it's hard to feel the victory when we don't get to even see a single panel of the Magmen actually freeing prisoners from their death chambers. Narration says they do it, 1 panel later, they're done. Weren't there thousands of mutants trapped in there? They can't all have been liberated so quickly. And occasionally pages seem to have a lot of unutilized space. Not just seeing only a small fraction of the stasis cells, but this one page in particular that's almost half of just Nickel's cartoonish reaction to not getting revenge on their mechanical foe.
Next, we take a look at the aforementioned JLX, written by Gerard Jones and Mark Waid, accompanied by art from Howard Porter, John Dell, and Gloria Vasquez.
The cover features the team apparently charging to battle, except for one white-haired little dude mugging for the reader. Maybe he's sneaking away as part of a prank. He's got that mischievous smirk on him. We begin with a splash page of the 7 Judgment League Avengers led by Super Soldier, as they launch an attack on their former teammates, who have apparently formed the JLX, and sided with the Mariner, King of Atlantis, and First Mutant. The Ray/Cyclops combo Apollo is aided by the telepathic intervention of Mr. X, who tells them to ditch their old comrades so their sub can dive with less chance of being followed. And he looks a lot more tan than he did in the previous comic.
Is it just me, or does Judgment League Avengers sound equal parts weird to say, and also with a hint of oppressive intent? Not unlike Justice Lords, to use an animated example. Makes you wonder why anyone would use that as a super team name.
As Warren, aka Angel Hawk, is told to play his trump card while fighting Night Creeper, he stumbles into the water saying his back was broken. While his green opponent looks devastated, his teammate Goliath looks hilariously dumbfounded. A pause in battle lets Super Soldier chide his opponents, while Apollo chides him back for the innocent Mariner's imprisonment, for the sake of mutant haters. Apparently, this was detailed in the now classic JLA number 122.
This was something I often remembered from some of the Amalgam books I read, but wasn't in previous comics we've looked at. Editor's notes referencing non-existent issues and events. It really helps the immersion into this combined universe, and it's not the only note in this issue.
Captain Marvel retrieves Angel Hawk, who had the pain of a busted spine psychically projected into his noggin. He's also secretly a mutant, which Mr. X reminds him in their mind chat that only the 2 of them know. The Avengers decide to call it a day and capture Mariner at a later time should he be proven guilty of torching rocks on tankers. In the meantime, the mutants board their sub, but can't submerge due to damage from the battle. In an effort to find the ancestral home of mutant kind, X psychically searches Mariner's mind to find the Serpent's Crown, which is inscribed with clues to Atlantis' location, which the King can decipher. Night Creeper interrupts a tender moment between Apollo and Firehawk. Mercury is eager to get on with the mission to keep his mind off a personal failure involving the Flash, and Mariner questions Marco Xavier's motives. He'd only ever been known as a crime boss and never claimed to be a mutant, despite using his psychic powers to evade the law. There are other kinds of outcasts, my dear Mariner, than mutants.
If this is about the band Outcast again, I'm just saying, give their second album a chance, and you might like them.
But as they begin their ill-advised dive, the hull starts buckling under the pressure. Mariner and Firehawk keep busy by making sure they don't die, while Runaway, a combination of Rogue and DC's Gypsy, asks Wraith, Gambit/Negative Man, if his phasing powers could save her. This is something of a shock, since she'd never put herself ahead of her team, but she doesn't want to risk losing the only person she can touch without draining their life force. They find a dome and quickly enter Atlantis. Of course, by the top panel it looks like they bounced off the driveway. Unfortunately, the entire place seems deserted as they entered the air-filled streets. which Mariner is quick to blame on surface dweller pollution. No time for a debate on reusing and recycling, however, as an explosion precedes the splash page introduction of Will Magnus and his Sentinels, one of whom looks human-sized and oddly feminine.
With a character like Antimony or her DC Half-Platinum, they were created based on someone their respective creators knew, but I don't think that's the case with this one. So the fact that this guy gave this lady droid pouty lips and a curvaceous torso is creepy.
But that's not the only element indicating him as the clear villain. Admitting he framed Mariner for the destroyed tankers mentioned earlier, he holds the Serpent Crown, which he plans to use to locate Atlantis' missing populace and eliminate them like he will all the land-based mutants. Mariner lunges at the mad scientist, spinning his anchor weapon, but is blasted aside by the ever-loyal Yocasta, protecting her precious dock, while the larger Sentinels attack. Kinda wonder how they got in through that small port. While Firehawk is knocked out of the air and Apollo is narrowly saved from twin energy blasts, Will tells Yocasta to get closer and help celebrate the end of his brother's kind. And looking where his hand is placed...
Ew, 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 ew.
Runaway flies in, intending to drain Magnus with her powers until he's a vegetable, which proves to Wraith that, while their physical contact does no harm to him, his inexhaustible darkness gets absorbed into Runaway and is slowly driving her mad. When the Fembot knocks the mutant woman aside, Wraith tries to make up for what he's unknowingly done by destroying Yocasta with his charged staff and going to find his girlfriend. "Fellow mutants, follow Wraith! Fight not from fear, but from rage!"
Finally, Gambit is somewhat useful. Wait, that's not fair. Finally, half of Gambit is somewhat useful. Yeah, that works better.
Will mourns the destruction of his bot Friday, cradling her head in his arms, then orders his towering minions to attack the towers. "And now they turn the battle against me again. Well, not this time. This time I will use no subtlety!"
Dude, given the frame you built for your subservient fembot, I don't think subtlety exists in your personal dictionary.
Mr. X is the only one who can save the unconscious Runaway from falling rubble, and does so by changing into a more powerful green form for all to see. Note the M mark over his right eye. He's at least part Bishop from the X-Men. Though the Sentinel scans show he has no mutant gene, Magnus recognizes X is still powerful, but must retreat to rebuild his girlfriend and plot genocide. While some of the JLX want to go after the madman, X says they should focus on finding the Atlanteans. Introducing himself as Jean Jones, last surviving Skrull from the planet Mars, he'd hid alone on Earth for years with his shape-shifting powers, and thought he had found a community to belong to when he heard of the mutant persecution. Apollo calls shenanigans on this, since he's an alien, but Mariner states he's still no different from the rest of them, who are considered alien to other humans. The King is willing to continue following X, and on the last splash page, the team poses over the rubble of Atlantis, Jean swearing to help them find the missing inhabitants, and the aquatic monarch saying they're with him, for now. Next, Apocalypso.
Huh. Sounds like a weird musical fusion of calypso and death metal. Or a sequel to a Mel Gibson movie. Anyway, that was another fun read, and I can't say that I found much of anything that I heavily disliked about it.
The art was good, not nearly as much cheesecake as X-Patrol or even a gratuitous shot like in Magnetic Men. We got some good fight scenes, quiet interpersonal moments that let you get into the characters' heads, and an intriguing mystery that would make you want a second issue if this were a legit ongoing. Though I did notice the vaunted serpent crown kind of disappeared. I don't think Magnus has any pockets on that suit, so where'd he put it after Yocasta got scrapped? And then there's the scene of Apollo firing at Captain Marvel. Proportionally speaking, it doesn't look like it really makes any sense.
one eye shooting up at an angle, but it doesn't seem long enough for the perspective to make Mar-Vell that small. It makes me wonder if this is supposed to be like two panels mashed together due to the choice of not adding a gutter. I don't know, it just looks weird to me. And what are you talking about next issue, Caption? Apollo's not missing, he's right there!
I dare say this might be the best of my collection of Amalgam comics. Then again, I have neither read nor owned them all, so there you go. Next week, we take a look at the final 2 stories from this merged reality. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.